Boy discovers a small door behind the cabinet and the whole family has to move out that night. Paul and Lauren, along with their 7-year-old son Henry, had just moved into an old rental house in the Virginia suburbs 3 days ago. The house sat in a small alley, surrounded by overgrown hedges and a patch of wild grass in the back. It wasn't large, but it was enough for the 3 of them to live comfortably, and more importantly, the rent was surprisingly cheap. "It still feels a bit cold, even though you turned on the heater," Lauren said softly as the couple unpacked boxes in the kitchen. "It's cold because the house hasn't gotten used to people yet," Paul replied, plugging in an appliance with a smile. "Give it a few days with the smell of cooking and the sound of laughter, it'll warm up. Trust me." Meanwhile, Henry was running around upstairs, playing hide-and-seek by himself with his teddy bear, named Teddy. Lauren wiped her hands and looked up toward the stairs. "Sweetie, don't go up to the attic, okay? There could be rusty nails or dust." "I know, Mom," Henry shouted down. But the sound of small footsteps still echoed above. Lauren sighed, used to her son's curiosity. About half an hour later, Henry came rushing downstairs, his face pale, clutching Teddy tightly, and whispering, "Mom, I found a weird door behind the closet." Paul looked up. "What door?" "When I hid behind the wooden wardrobe in the old bedroom, behind it was this small wooden door. It didn't have a lock, Dad. I opened it. There's a tunnel inside. It's really dark." Lauren froze, glancing at her husband. "Paul. You must have imagined it, son," Paul said, crouching down to ruffle the boy's hair. "This house is old. Lots of cracks and weird noises. It's normal to imagine things. You're fine." "It wasn't my imagination. It smelled bad. And cold wind came out of it." Teddy was scared too. Paul chuckled. "Buddy, Teddy is a stuffed animal." But Henry didn't laugh. His eyes darkened. The next 3 days passed in tense silence. Henry changed. He no longer babbled about school or jumped up and down whenever Lauren baked cookies. Instead, he became quiet, his eyes always distant and haunted. "Mom," Henry whispered one chilly morning, "every night I hear footsteps under the floor. Are you sure it's not just the wind?" Lauren asked gently. "No. They're leather shoes, one step at a time." Then a man scratching the floor. "Mom, I'm scared." Lauren held him close, her hands stiff. Just last night, she too had felt like someone was standing outside their bedroom door. But when she turned on the light, everything looked normal. She told Paul. "Maybe it's rats," he said. "Or Henry's just spooked by what he imagined the first time." "This isn't just imagination, Paul. I can see the change in him. And I couldn't sleep either. There's this strange smell in the bedroom, like mold and blood." Paul frowned. "All right. Tonight, I'll go up and check behind that wardrobe. Maybe it's just a hole in the wall or an old air duct." That night, after Henry was asleep, Paul grabbed a flashlight and went upstairs. The wooden wardrobe Henry mentioned was pushed against the wall in the 3rd bedroom, which had previously been a storage room. It was heavy, made of walnut darkened with age. He strained to push it aside. Dust flew everywhere, and Lauren covered her nose behind him. "Do you see anything?" she asked. Paul shone the flashlight. And, there it was. A small wooden door. No larger than a garden shed door, and clearly without a lock. The brass handle was tarnished. "Holy crap, he was telling the truth," Paul muttered. He gave it a try. The door slid open with a long, creaking wail like a sob. A gust of cold air blew out. Inside was a brick tunnel, low and dark. The smell of mold, dampness, and something nauseating hit them, making Lauren gag. "We should call the police," she said immediately. "Wait. Maybe it's just an old ventilation shaft. The landlord forgot to seal it." Paul. This house sat empty for nearly 2 years. No one lived here. And now our son. He fell silent. His breathing slowed. I'll lock this door. Henry won't get near it. Tomorrow, we'll call someone to inspect it. Lauren nodded, but her eyes stayed fixed on the tunnel. Something in that darkness was watching them. The next day, Henry had a mild fever. Lauren kept him home and took him to the doctor. When she returned, she found Paul talking to a stranger, a tall, thin man with salt and pepper hair, wearing a black coat and sunglasses. He held a stack of papers in his hand. "Hello, I'm Stephen Carter," the man said in a thick United States accent. "I live nearby. Heard you folks just moved in, so I thought I'd stop by and say hello." Lauren squinted. "Where do you live?" "3 houses down. I live with my elderly mother, she's bedridden. I used to know the previous owner of this house, Mr. Michael." He kept to himself. Paul shot his wife a cautious look. "Have you ever been inside this house?" "No, but I've seen the lights on around midnight, even though no one was supposed to be living here." "When was that?" Lauren pressed. "About 6 months ago. We were told no one's lived here in 2 years." Stephen shrugged. "People lie. You should be careful. This house isn't the best place to raise a kid." With that, he turned and walked away. Paul watched his figure retreat, then stepped inside and shut the door. "Did you think there was something off about him?" Lauren asked right away. "A lot. Paul. I'm starting to believe Henry. And I think we're living in something more than just an old house." Paul nodded. "I'll dig into the previous owner. You keep an eye on Henry. Don't let him play alone in that room anymore." Lauren squeezed his hand, her eyes filled with worry. That night, they heard the faint scratching under the floor again. And Henry dreamt of the man sitting on the ground, wearing a uniform, staring at the ceiling and whispering my name. "Paul, I heard it again," Lauren whispered at just past 3 a.m. She switched on the bedside lamp, listening. Scratching. At first, soft, like someone gently dragging fingernails across the wood. Then it got more urgent, like something trying to claw its way up from beneath the earth. Lauren stepped out of bed, pulling on a thin coat, shivering. "Where?" Paul asked, sitting up. "Right under us. Right beneath the floor." They fell silent. The scratching stopped. Only the faint whistle of wind came through the window cracks. "Maybe a rat," Paul said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Paul, no rat scratches like that. I swear to you that sound, it was human. Someone scratching with their nails. And the smell, don't you smell that awful stench?" Paul inhaled deeply. There was a smell like a long-forgotten animal carcass rotting under a sewer grate. The next morning, Henry refused to eat breakfast. He sat still on his chair, hugging Teddy, eyes blank. "Henry, are you feeling sick?" Lauren asked, sitting beside him. "Don't want to eat." "Did you have another dream last night?" she asked softly. "It wasn't a dream. It was real," Henry replied. "He's down there. He's sitting and watching me. Every night, he gets closer. I don't know what he wants. But, he's angry. He wears a blue shirt with a shiny badge. There's blood on his shoulder." Lauren froze. "A uniform?" "Yeah. Like a policeman. But old. Torn." Paul leaned against the doorway, fists clenched. He had heard it all. That afternoon, after dropping Henry off at school, Paul decided to move the wardrobe completely. The small wooden door was still there, but this time, he noticed muddy footprints on the wooden floor smudged and stained with something dark. "Did you see this before?" Paul called Lauren upstairs. She shook her head. "No. These are new." "Definitely. They looked at each other. Get your phone. Take a photo, Paul said. He crouched down and carefully opened the door. The flashlight beamed into the tiny tunnel damp bricks, a ceiling so low an adult would have to crawl. At the far end of the tunnel, something had just moved. Did you see that? Lauren stepped back. I think so. This tunnel, someone's used it recently. Paul, I'm scared. This house isn't safe anymore. We need to know what's going on. What do you mean? Call the police. Or get someone to break up the floor. And tell them our son is being haunted by a ghost in a police uniform. Paul was silent. We need proof. Something concrete. Lauren nodded. But that night, she started setting alarms every 2 hours to check on Henry's room. 2 days later, while doing laundry, Lauren noticed a strange smell near the staircase. It wasn't the usual musty odor, it was thicker, tinged with rust and something dead. She followed the scent. As she passed the third bedroom, it became overwhelming. She opened the door. Henry was sitting alone in the corner, scribbling on paper. Henry! What are you doing in here? The boy looked up, his eyes blank. Drawing him. Lauren stepped closer and looked at the picture. A man sat slumped on the ground, his head tilted to one side, eyes pitch black like bottomless holes. There was a badge on his chest, but it had been crossed out with black ink. Behind him was a dark tunnel with smears of blood. What was he doing? He was staring at me. And smiling. But not a happy smile. It was creepy. Lauren pulled her son into her arms, her hands trembling. Henry, from now on, you are not allowed in this room. I'll lock it. Promise me, okay? The boy didn't respond. But he rested his head on her shoulder, as if he too wanted to escape the darkness. That evening, when Paul came home from work, Lauren told him everything. After hearing it all, he quietly said, I already booked a home inspector, Mr. Samuel. He's originally from the US, been living here a long time. He's good at checking old houses. He'll be here tomorrow. Lauren nodded. We have to do something before Henry gets hurt even more. The next morning, Samuel arrived, a short man with a thick beard, speaking slowly and calmly. This the spot? He asked, looking into the room. Paul pointed to the small wooden door behind the wardrobe. There's a tunnel behind that. Can you help us find out where it leads? Samuel sniffed and stepped forward. I've seen houses like this. Virginia has a lot of old homes with bomb shelters from the Civil War era. But why are there signs of recent use? Sometimes homeless folks or criminals use these places to hide. A few years ago, the police found a fugitive living in the wine cellar of an abandoned bakery. Lauren turned pale. You mean, someone could be down there right now? I'm not sure. But don't go down alone. I'll bring equipment tomorrow morning and do a thorough check. Paul thanked him. As Samuel was leaving, he glanced back at the room once more. Something's not right here, he muttered. Feels like someone never left. That night, Henry screamed in the middle of the night. Lauren rushed into his room and found him wrapped tightly in his blanket, drenched in sweat. He came out, Mom. From the tunnel. He climbed up to the edge of the wardrobe. His eyes were glowing red, his mouth full of blood. He said, Get out of my house. Lauren couldn't breathe. She held her son tight, trying to calm him. It's okay, sweetheart. I'm here. No one's going to hurt you. No, Mom. He hates me. He knows I saw him. Paul entered the room, his eyes clouded. We're not going to let anyone hurt Henry. Tomorrow morning, I'm calling the police. Lauren nodded, but deep down, she knew the police might not be able to help, not without evidence. And whoever or whatever was threatening their son might not even be human, at least not anymore. Nightfall blanketed the neighborhood in a cold gray hue. Lauren had taken Henry to stay with an old friend named Beth, a retired nurse who lived 2 blocks away. They had known each other in college. Though it had been years since they'd last spoken, when Lauren called, Beth had only said, "Bring him here now. I've got a bad feeling." Back at the house, Paul decided to do what he should have done earlier. After Lauren went to bed, he grabbed a flashlight, put on gloves, opened the small wooden door behind the wardrobe, and crawled into the tunnel. Inside, it was cold and damp. A rancid smell hit him immediately, making him gag. The ceiling was so low he had to crawl flat on his stomach. The bricks beneath him were slick with moss. The flashlight beam flickered as he reached the end of the tunnel. There, a small chamber opened up. He moved in slowly. The space was just large enough for a person to sit. The ground was a mix of dirt and broken bricks. In one corner was an old gray burlap sack, next to a rusty metal box. Paul dragged it out. The box was heavy, the latch already broken. Inside, a plastic bag containing old documents, a black USB drive, some matchboxes, and a stack of disorganized papers. Paul opened the plastic bag first. Passports. IDs. Driver's licenses. All with the photo of the same man: brown hair, dark eyes, square jaw but with different names: Luke Reynolds, Andrew Taylor, Matthew Vaughn. He looked up, heart pounding. The man in the photos looked just like the one Stephen had described the house's previous owner. And then there was another photo, same face but wearing a police uniform, with his face slashed through in red ink. "Michael Graves," Paul muttered, flipping the photo. On the back, scrawled handwriting, "Traitor." He pulled out more documents: cash receipts, stamped faintly by a bank in Goleta, Santa Barbara. Large sums, with no clear purpose. Lastly, the USB. Paul stuffed it into his coat pocket and stood. He looked around. The chamber had clearly been someone's hideout. Soot on the walls. An old candle stub. And a dried bloodstain clearly visible on the floor. He crawled quickly out of the tunnel. Just as he was shutting the door, Paul heard a faint sound like footsteps gliding outside the hallway. He froze, holding his breath. No one. He shoved the wardrobe back into place, locked the room, and went downstairs. Lauren was still awake. "Where have you been?" she asked, her eyes tired. Paul showed her everything. Lauren took the papers, staring at each photo. When she reached the one labeled Michael Graves, she went still. "It's him," she whispered. "The one who was hanging around near our house a few days ago. That look, he's been watching us." Paul nodded. "He's not just hiding. He's trying to erase something. But why come back to his old house?" Lauren pointed to the photo. "If he was once a cop, he'd know which places wouldn't raise suspicion. Maybe this house was where he hid something important: evidence, money, something he never got back. And if he knows we've been in the tunnel," Paul didn't finish the sentence. He looked at Lauren, his eyes heavy. "We're out of time." The next day, Mr. Samuel returned with a high-powered floodlight and an old infrared camera. Paul led him into the room and moved the wardrobe aside. "Do you want to go down?" "No, I just need to scan and take pictures. The tunnel's too tight. If there's danger, you'll be able to move quicker." Paul clipped the light to his collar, put on gloves, and went down again. Samuel took photos from the entrance, adjusting the settings repeatedly. "See anything?" he asked. "Yes. A small chamber, like a temporary shelter. There's blood, a metal box, and footprints. They're not mine." Samuel froze. "Photograph everything. Then come back up." Paul did as instructed, handing the camera and light to him. As they left the room, the older man reviewed the photos, frowning. "This blood, it's fresh. Still red. And those footprints: leather shoes, size 9 or so. Someone's still coming here. No doubt about it." Lauren stood nearby, stunned. You think it's Michael? Samuel nodded. If it is, he's dangerous. And very smart. Don't touch anything else. Call the police. Or at least someone who knows how to handle this. Do you know anyone? Paul asked quickly. Yes. An old friend, now a lawyer. He used to work with internal affairs. I'll message him. But you need to be careful. Don't leave any signs that you're suspicious. That night, Lauren received a phone call from Henry at Beth's house. Mom, he came back. Where did you see him? In my dream. But this time he was standing at our front door. Holding something like a hammer. And he was crying. He cried and said, "Stop digging. I'll burn everything down." Lauren gripped the phone tightly. Are you okay, honey? Yes. But Mom. Teddy is torn. There's red stuff on his hand. Lauren froze. The next morning, she told Paul, Henry isn't imagining things. He knows our son. He's already made contact. And he's going to come back. Paul placed the USB drive on the table. I'm going to check this. It might be the key. He plugged it into the computer and opened the only folder inside. A list of video files appeared, each labeled with a date code. Paul clicked one. The screen lit up, a small dim room, and a man sitting in front of the camera. It was Michael Graves. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes wild. I didn't kill anyone. They set me up. They wanted the money I took from the operation in Washington, D.C. I was just keeping it safe for the team. They killed my partners and pinned it on me. Lauren covered her mouth. If anyone finds this video, please don't believe the media. I'm in hiding. But I'll come back to clear my name. I know who's following me. The video cut off in static. Jesus Christ, Paul whispered. Lauren trembled. He was betrayed. And now, he's gone insane. Paul nodded. And he thinks everything we're doing is a threat. He's going to act. We need to know exactly who Michael Graves is, Paul said, eyes still fixed on the screen. We can't base everything on a few video clips. Lauren nodded, hands shaking. Didn't Mr. Samuel say he had a contact in internal affairs? Yes, his name's Richard Collins. Retired, but still has connections. I sent him Michael's photo and a copy of the video. And what did he say? No reply yet. But you know, if we know who Michael is, that means Michael knows we know. Do you remember his eyes the first time he came to the house? That look, like he was testing us. Or threatening us. They stared at each other, neither saying another word. The house felt eerily quiet, and even the smallest sound startled them both. That afternoon, Paul received a call from Richard. I've seen the video, came the raspy voice of an older man. And you're right. That's Michael Graves, former deputy inspector from the Washington, D.C. district. He disappeared 2 years ago during an internal investigation. For what reason? Corruption, Richard answered bluntly. But the case was dropped midway. Many files went missing, a few witnesses died under suspicious circumstances. The last person to see him was the commanding captain who died in a car accident 3 days after filing a complaint. Paul gripped the phone. Do you believe he's innocent? I believe he knew too much. And when he tried to speak up, they tried to eliminate him, but he survived. Since then, he's been a fugitive. Then why did he come back? To this house. It might be the last place he felt in control. Or where he hid something important. So is he dangerous? There was a pause, then Richard said, extremely. Not just because he's cornered, but because he was trained. Be careful, Paul. He won't kill just in self-defense. After the call, Lauren asked, do you think he's still nearby? Probably watching. I'm going to check the neighborhood security cameras. Lauren thought aloud. And Henry, he's still dreaming about him every night. But he's never tried to hurt Henry directly. Maybe not yet. But our son's spirit is breaking. Paul gripped his wife's shoulders. I promise I'll protect you both. No matter what happens. That night, Lauren couldn't sleep. Around 3 a.m., the wind whistled through the cracks in the window, long and drawn out, but this time, mixed in with it was a low moaning sound like a man gasping. She sat up, opened the door, and crept down the hallway. The hallway light flickered a few times, then went out completely. Lauren froze, her back suddenly cold. Then came the scratching sound, this time loud and violent. It wasn't a rat. It was fingernails, human nails clawing madly at the wood. She screamed. Paul rushed up from downstairs and flipped on every light. But the sound had stopped. You heard that, right? Lauren's voice shook. I heard it. Clearly. From beneath Henry's room. The next morning, they decided to take Henry to see a child psychologist, a woman named Isabel Harris, well known in the area. After an hour-long session, Dr. Harris came out and spoke quietly. Henry is showing signs of post-traumatic anxiety. But what matters is the content of what he's saying. It's not irrational. It's structured. And consistent. You mean, he's not making it up? Lauren asked. Not entirely. Children often see what adults overlook. He's sensing a presence, something our minds try to suppress. Paul stepped in. What do you think it is? It could be the emotional darkness embedded in the house itself. Or it could be Michael, if he really lived there. Can you help him? I'll try. But if the house remains the same, Henry won't get better. Back home, Paul received an email from Richard, found Michael's old registered address matches the house you're renting. There's a chance he faked the landlord's name or used someone else to sign. Be extremely cautious. I'm sending the full file by mail. Attached was a scanned file of the original record. Lauren stared at it. Oh my God, the name listed as the tenant is Andrew Taylor. That's one of the aliases on those IDs. Paul nodded, his face tense. We're living in the house of a fugitive. And he's trying to come back. Later that evening, while taking out the trash, Lauren ran into Stephen, the neighbor who'd visited on their first day. You're still living here? Stephen raised an eyebrow. We haven't left yet. Have you heard anything at night? Why do you ask? Because I heard footsteps around 2 a.m. coming from your direction. Definitely not rats. And 2 nights ago, someone stood outside my gate, long coat, wearing a hat. When I turned the lights on, he ran. Lauren stiffened. Did you see his face? No. But he was tall, broad-shouldered. Looked like the guy who used to live here. Michael. You knew him? Sort of. Not well. Just one of those guys no one wanted to mess with. Lauren thanked him and went home to tell Paul. Stephen saw him. Up close, she said. And if he's wandering this close, then it's not just watching. He's getting ready to act. That night, in the living room, Lauren went through Henry's recent drawings. Every one of them showed the same theme: a man sitting underground, eyes shadowed, sometimes crying, sometimes screaming. In one drawing, there were flames. The man was holding a lighter, staring up at the ceiling. Paul, she whispered. Our son is seeing the future. What? If he really plans to burn this place down, like he said in the video, then he won't leave any survivors. Paul picked up the drawing, his heart heavy. The strokes Henry made didn't look like those of a 7-year-old. They were warnings, desperate and haunted. He stood up, fists clenched. We can't just sit and wait. We have to prepare. We have to find where he's hiding. Before it's too late. That morning, a light drizzle fell from the gray sky. Paul and Lauren had just finished breakfast when the doorbell rang. Henry was still staying at Beth's, so the prolonged chime startled them both. Lauren glanced at the front gate camera feed. A man in a raincoat stood waiting, holding a folder. A small real estate company logo was stitched onto his sleeve. "Paul, it's him," she gasped, heart pounding. Paul stepped up, staring at the screen. Though the man wore a hat and face mask, those eyes were unmistakable, cold, sharp, and watching. "Let's just let him stand there." But Michael pressed the doorbell again. And again. Finally, Paul took a deep breath and buzzed open the gate. The man walked up, as professional and composed as any company rep. When he reached the steps, he removed his mask and smiled. "Hello. I'm Michael Sorry, currently Mark Jenkins with Gracia Realty. I've been sent to inspect the roof and waterproofing system. The former owner reported possible leakage issues." Lauren stiffened. "We didn't report anything. The property owner did. They want routine checks, as this house is registered under a quarterly maintenance program." Paul nodded subtly. "Do you have documentation to verify that?" Michael handed over a folder. Inside were repair contracts and a signed authorization from another name, Luke Reynolds. Paul skimmed it, then responded calmly, "We have a young child at home. It's not a good time for visitors. Please leave your info. I'll confirm with the office." Michael's smile thinned. "Of course. I'm just following protocol. After all, this house is special, isn't it?" That final sentence landed like a knife in the air. He turned, walking slowly across the lawn. But just before exiting the gate, he looked back. "Have a nice day. And be careful with what's underneath. The ground here tends to shift." The gate slammed shut. Lauren began to tremble. "Paul, he knows. He's warning us. He knows we were in the basement." Paul nodded, eyes darkening. "He didn't come to check the roof. He came to say, 'I'm back.'" That afternoon, they got a call from Mr. Samuel. "I just spoke with the previous broker who handled your house. Her name's Dorothy Newman. She said she met a man with valid documents under the name Luke Reynolds, about 6 feet tall, brown hair, deep-set eyes, exactly like Michael. So he used a fake identity to lease his own house. Or he paid someone to do it for him. Either way, that name doesn't exist in the property tax system. What do you think he came back for?" "Definitely something important. Could be cash. Could be files. And if you've got that USB, he won't let it go." Lauren broke in, "What should we do now?" "Add more locks. Set up hidden cameras. And, never be alone in the house at night. I'll stop by tomorrow afternoon." That night, Lauren couldn't sleep. She stared at the camera feeds from the front and back doors. At 2:14 a.m., a figure appeared. The face wasn't clear. But the height, the way he moved, unmistakable. "Paul," she whispered. He jumped up and looked at the screen. Michael was standing at the corner of the backyard, not far from the basement door. He didn't move. He just stood staring. "Don't do anything reckless," Paul murmured, gripping the panic button on the alarm remote. But after 5 minutes, Michael turned and disappeared into the darkness. "How did he get in?" Lauren whispered. "Could have climbed the fence. Or, maybe he was already here." That thought sent a chill down both their spines. The next morning, they took Henry to another session and left him with Beth for a few days. In the car, Henry whispered. "Mom, last night he didn't speak." "What do you mean, honey?" "He stood outside the window. Didn't blink. Like a statue. But I saw him holding something, like a stick or a hook." Lauren squeezed his hand. "It's okay. You'll be safe at Beth's." Back home, they found a small white slip of paper on the doorstep. It had no writing. But on the back, a faint wet smudge like a rain-soaked fingerprint. Lauren picked it up, lips tight. "It's a warning." Paul nodded. "He's playing mind games. Intimidation. Trying to shake us. But he hasn't broken in. Hasn't attacked. He's waiting for something. Or someone." That evening, while Paul was out shopping, Lauren stayed home alone. As she was rinsing a glass, a soft click echoed from upstairs. She turned off the faucet, listening. No sound from Henry. No one was supposed to be up there. "Paul?" she called out, even though she knew he wasn't home. No answer. Footsteps. Very faint. Slow. One at a time. Lauren's hand trembled as she grabbed a small knife from the kitchen counter. Her palms were sweaty. She climbed the stairs slowly, heart pounding. Henry's bedroom door was ajar. She pushed it open gently. The room was empty. But the wardrobe had been moved. And the small door to the tunnel was wide open. She screamed. Paul returned to find Lauren collapsed on the floor, hands shaking. He was here, Paul. He opened the tunnel. He was in the house. Paul ran upstairs. The door was indeed open. Nothing seemed taken, but there were fresh muddy footprints and a discarded cigarette butt. That night, they called the police. A young officer named Martin Owens arrived, looked around, and said, "No signs of forced entry. No clear evidence of a break-in. No injuries. I'll file a report, but I'm not sure there's much we can do." Lauren stared at him, desperate. "We have evidence. Fake IDs, the USB, photos." Owens sighed. "I believe you. But the legal system needs more. If you had a video of him breaking in, or a clear witness statement, then we could act." Paul's voice turned cold. "So we wait until he sets the place on fire to have enough evidence?" Owens said nothing. Before leaving, he muttered, "If I were you, I wouldn't stay here. Not with a child." But Michael didn't disappear after the break-in. On the contrary, he came more frequently, more boldly, as if trying to drown Paul's family in daily fear. In just 3 days, he returned 3 times. First, to check the electric meter. Second, to inspect a water leak. And the third, just to knock and say he was verifying the lease. Each time, he was well dressed, with paperwork under a fake name, Mark Jenkins, Luke Reynolds, or Andrew Taylor, all names Paul had seen on the forged IDs in the basement. Each time, Lauren stood behind the door, gripping a kitchen knife hidden in her coat pocket. And Paul, though calm and collected in his tone, always had trembling hands hidden under his sleeves. On the 4th day, when Michael showed up claiming to be fixing the toilet, Paul had had enough. "How many more times are you going to show up?" he asked, voice steady. Michael smiled, his eyes sharp as blades. "Until the system runs perfectly. You're not a technician. And you're not a judge. But I know who you are." For the first time, Michael's gaze darkened. He stepped closer, voice lowering. "You know, but you can't do anything, can you? No evidence. No warrant. Nothing. Just imagination. And my son?" Paul hissed through clenched teeth. "Is he just imagining you when he draws your face every night?" Michael tilted his head, his smile growing more twisted. "Kids tend to daydream a lot." Then he turned and walked away, leaving a deadly silence behind. That day, Lauren decided to send Henry to her mother's house in Lincoln. Beth agreed that it was the best decision. "The boy needs to get out of there," she said over the phone. "He's been drawing things, truly disturbing. And his eyes, Lauren, they look like he doesn't trust adults anymore." "I know," Lauren choked up. "But I can't leave the house right now. I need to face this." That night, after Henry left, the house felt eerily empty. Lauren walked down to the kitchen and noticed the fridge door slightly ajar. She distinctly remembered closing it. Inside, the milk bottle was tilted, and a glass had been moved out of place. "Paul," she called quietly. He rushed downstairs. "What is it?" She pointed to the fridge. "Did you open this?" "No." Lauren grabbed his hand. "Someone's been in the house." Paul quickly checked every door and window, but there were no signs of forced entry. However, at the back door, the one that led to the basement, there was a fresh smear of mud. A small clump of dirt was stuck to the door handle. "He has a key," Paul said. "Or he made a copy." "We can't stay here, Paul." "No. You go to Lincoln with Henry." "I'll stay. I can't let him keep controlling everything. If he's after something in this house, I'm going to find it first." The next day, Samuel arrived as promised. He brought along a colleague, a woman in her 40s named Diane Morgan, formerly with a special financial crimes unit. Her voice was firm, decisive, and left no room for hesitation. "I've reviewed the documents," she said after examining the photos. "Michael Graves was tied to a major money laundering case. He may have hidden something here he never got the chance to retrieve. And now he's come back for it." Lauren asked. "Exactly. It could be a second USB. It could be cash. Or a ledger. But if he realizes you've discovered the basement, he won't wait any longer." Paul asked, "What do we do?" "Don't let him know you're investigating. Play the frightened victim. I'll plant an infrared hidden camera in the bedroom, near the wardrobe. We need him to repeat his behavior." "What about Henry?" "He must not return until we have enough evidence to arrest him." That night, Lauren packed her things to leave. Before getting in the car, she hugged Paul tightly. "Are you sure about this?" Paul nodded. "This has to end. I'm worried about you. He's not normal." "I know. But at least he's shown his face. Better that than an enemy in the dark." Lauren stepped into the car, eyes wet with tears. "Call me every night. If you don't, I'll come back." Paul smiled. "I promise." That first night alone, Paul didn't sleep. He sat in the living room, eyes fixed on the feed from the hidden camera. Around 2 a.m., a faint figure moved across the bedroom screen. His heart clenched. No door had opened. No sound had been made. But the shadow clearly passed through. He hit record immediately. The figure, unmistakably Michael, walked straight to the wardrobe, knelt on the floor. But then, he stopped. Turned. And looked directly at the camera. His eyes were ice cold. As if he'd known all along someone was watching. Then he raised a finger to his lips. A gesture. And vanished. The next morning, Paul sent the video to Diane. She called back within 10 minutes. "We saw it. He knows about the camera. But he didn't cover his face, which means he wants us to see him. This is when the game really begins. So what do we do? Wait for him to slip up. And above all, stay calm." Paul hung up and looked around the house. It now felt like a psychological battlefield where the hunter wore a suit, walked softly, and knew exactly how to terrorize his prey. On the second night, Paul didn't sleep. He kept a folding knife under his pillow. Around 1:48 a.m., the doorbell rang. He didn't answer. The knocking grew louder. Then stopped. The camera feed showed Michael stood there, holding something. A photo. He held it up against the camera lens. It was a picture of Henry, the one that had been framed in their bedroom, now clearly taken. Paul clenched his fists until they bled. Michael mouthed the words, even without sound, "I know where he is." Then turned and walked away. The image of Michael holding Henry's photo haunted Paul the entire next day. The picture was gone from the bedroom. That meant he had been inside possibly even before the night before. Quiet. Leaving no trace. Just a terrifying message, I can reach your son anytime. Paul immediately called Lauren, his voice trembling. He took Henry's photo. Don't let him out of your mother's house for even 1 second. Oh my God, Paul. Are you sure he's been inside? No mistake. He stood right in front of the camera, held up the photo, and shushed. On the other end, Lauren's voice cracked. I want to come home. No. That's what he wants. He wants you to panic. Paul, if anything happens to Henry, I'll never survive. Nothing will happen. I swear. I've already sent the footage to Diane. She'll notify the police. That afternoon, an unmarked car parked quietly in front of the house. Diane and Samuel stepped out. I forwarded the video to an old contact in the Virginia task force, Diane said. But as I suspected, they need more to act officially. No physical harm. No confirmed unlawful entry. No court warrant. So we wait until he attacks? Paul asked, barely holding back. We force him into the open. Samuel pulled a small device from his coat pocket. Motion tracker. I'll place it around the basement and bedroom. If he returns, we'll know. What about the doors? Mechanical locks are intact. He probably has a copy. Or he's using some old crawlspace from the basement. Paul nodded, his face taut. And one more thing, Diane added. The photo he left could be a warning, or it could be the start of an escalation. So what's next? Paul asked. We wait. Only when night fell did Paul realize that waiting was the cruelest part of all. He sat in the living room, phone in hand, eyes glued to the camera screen. 1 a.m. Nothing happened. 1:30 a.m. A dark shadow darted across the backyard. Just a cat. 2:10 a.m. The basement sensor vibrated slightly. Something was moving near the basement door. Paul held his breath. Just a rat. He opened the thermal map. A hot spot was moving, very slowly. From the basement door up toward the bedroom floor. He jolted up, grabbed a flashlight, and tiptoed upstairs. The bedroom door was still closed. Paul opened it, and saw the small door to the basement slightly ajar. He froze. From below, the smell of damp earth and faint smoke rose. He shone the flashlight down. No one was there. But on the third step, there was a clear footprint, wet and dirty. The next morning, Paul went to the mailbox. A white envelope sat there prominently. No return address. He opened it, just a blank sheet of paper, not a single word. But the smell, it was what sent a chill down his spine. A faint smoky scent, mixed with gasoline. He held the paper up, sniffed closely. Definitely gasoline. Lauren called just then. Beth said someone was standing in front of the house this morning. Tall, wearing a hat, staring at the house. He left when she was about to call the police. Paul tightened his grip on the envelope. He's come all the way there. That afternoon, Lauren decided to call Lucy Walker, an old friend and investigative journalist. After hearing the story, Lucy went silent for a few seconds, then said, "This is big. If Michael really was a disgraced deputy inspector trying to eliminate evidence, then you're dealing with an underground organization. But I need to see that USB myself. Paul will send it today. I can run a segment on the regional news tomorrow night. But I need to verify it first. And once it's on air, there's no going back." Lauren looked at Henry sitting in his room, playing with Legos. There's been no turning back for a long time. That night, Paul locked every room, increased the camera volume, and added a chain lock to the basement door. He couldn't sleep. At 1:45 a.m., the sensor triggered again, this time, the one in the backyard. He turned on the camera. Michael was standing there. No mask. No attempt to hide. He looked straight into the lens, then slowly, pulled a lighter from his pocket. He held it up, flicked it on a flickering blue flame. Paul jumped up and rushed outside. By the time he got to the yard, Michael was gone. Only a plastic bottle lay in the middle of the lawn reeking of gasoline. And beneath it, a piece of paper, "I've waited long enough." The next morning, Lauren called, her voice shaking. "Lucy said the segment tonight will air a short clip from the USB, along with an anonymous accusation. They won't mention our names, but Michael's face will be shown." "We're doing the right thing," Paul replied. "He's gone too far. Henry's been doing a bit better. But last night, he drew again." "What did he draw?" "Still him. But this time, he was holding a lighter. Standing in front of our house." Paul collapsed into a chair. This couldn't go on. He called Diane. "He's going to do something tonight. I can feel it. We've alerted the police. They'll place plainclothes officers around the house after the broadcast. But remember, don't let him know you're aware." That afternoon, Mr. Samuel stopped by with an extra heavy chain lock. "Someone like him only needs one slip-up. Don't give him the chance." Paul nodded. "I'll bring a new signal scanner tomorrow. It can detect nearby mobile devices." "Thank you. I don't know how I'll ever repay you." Samuel shook his head. "It's not about repayment. I've seen that look in his eyes 2 years ago, when he vanished. I knew then he wasn't gone, he was preparing to come back." That night, the city of Virginia was swallowed in the biting cold of November, with a fine mist falling like a gray veil. Paul sat in the living room, eyes glued to his laptop screen, where the local news was about to broadcast a special report. The hidden truth: Michael Graves, former deputy inspector or fugitive? Lauren called from Lincoln. "Are you watching?" "I'm waiting. Lucy said the segment airs exactly at 8. Henry's asleep, but I couldn't bring myself to turn off the lights. I can't believe this is how we're living." Paul's voice softened. "This is the first step. After tonight, he won't be able to hide anymore." At exactly 8, the news began. The screen cut to the serious face of the anchor. "Ladies and gentlemen, in recent days, our station has received an anonymous video accusing a man believed to be Michael Graves, formerly deputy inspector with the Washington, D.C. police, of living under a false identity and evading the law. This footage was retrieved from a hidden USB, and after internal verification, we have decided to make it public." Paul held his breath. Lauren was silent on the line. The screen showed the clip: Michael sitting in a dim room, his face gaunt, eyes strained. "They killed them. Not me. I kept the money to turn it in. But they framed me. They staged the scene. If anyone finds this video, please." The video stopped. The anchor continued. "This photo has been compared to Michael Graves' official file missing since 2023. Sources confirm he was once under investigation for money laundering and may be linked to the deaths of 2 colleagues. The police are now reopening the case." Lauren broke into tears on the phone. "They did it. They aired it. No one can cover it up anymore. We've taken the first step," Paul whispered. "Now we wait for him to show his face." Less than an hour after the broadcast, Diane called. "Paul, he's not going to let this go. We've stationed 2 officers near your home. You are not to go outside until morning." "You think he'll act out?" "Absolutely. He's been cornered. And men like Michael, the more desperate they get, the more dangerous they become." Paul locked all the doors. The basement was reinforced with a steel bar across it. The cameras were still running. His hand gripped the phone. A knife lay hidden behind the sofa. Each minute crawled by. 1:10 a.m. The front camera moved. A figure was approaching. Paul leaned closer to the screen. It was Michael. No neat coat. No fake smile. He wore a hood, holding a large plastic fuel container. He has gasoline, Paul muttered, immediately dialing Diane. He's here. With gasoline. He might set fire. We know. The task force is on their way. Outside, Michael poured gasoline along the walkway, then sat down right on the front steps as if, waiting. Paul's hands trembled as he watched him through the camera. Michael's face was emotionless, occasionally lifting his head to stare straight into the lens as if waiting for the sirens. Come out, Michael whispered. Come out, I know you're watching. The sound of a siren rose in the distance. Michael immediately stood up, about to dump the rest of the gasoline near the window. Two plainclothes officers burst out from behind the fence, shouting. Police! Don't move! Michael turned, but didn't run. He pulled out his lighter, flicked his thumb, ignited it. I'll burn it all down, he screamed. I'll take everyone with me. A small explosion sounded not from the lighter, but from behind. Michael turned and was tackled by one of the officers, crashing down onto the brick path. The gas can flew from his hands, the lighter skidded away. He struggled violently, shouting. They betrayed me. They killed my partners. Four uniformed officers rushed from the patrol car and restrained him. One handcuffed him, another collected the can and lighter. Michael was pulled to his feet, hair disheveled, eyes bloodshot. Paul watched from the second-floor window, tears streaming down not from pity, but because the nightmare had finally ended. By morning, news of the arrest had spread across Virginia. Local TV reported that Michael Graves, a former police officer who had vanished from the force, was apprehended while attempting to burn down a private home. Lucy called Lauren. He's safe now. I just got confirmation that Virginia police are coordinating with Washington, D.C. They're reopening the case from 2 years ago. Lauren let out a deep breath. You're the one who saved us. No. You two were brave. Monsters like him exist only when people stay silent. Beth also called, her voice full of relief. The police came to confirm everything. They said Michael will be transported to Washington, D.C. today. Henry doesn't have to be scared anymore. Lauren gripped the phone. We'll be home with him this afternoon. Paul was sitting at a cafe down the street with Diane and Samuel. The three sat in silence for a while before Samuel spoke. I thought I understood people. But him, he goes beyond any human logic. Diane nodded gently. He's not insane. He just couldn't accept losing. And when pushed to the edge, he chose the most violent way to protect his delusional pride. Paul took a sip of the bitter coffee and spoke slowly. But this time, he didn't succeed. He didn't hurt anyone else. Diane smiled softly. Because you didn't break. You stayed clear-headed when everything tried to drown you. Paul looked up at the pale gray sky. The sun was peeking through the clouds. Now we just wait for Henry to come home. A week after Michael's arrest, the atmosphere in Paul and Lauren's home had completely changed. No more smell of gasoline, no more shadows lurking in the dark or prying eyes from outside. The house had been cleaned, the wood floors replaced, all the locks changed. Most importantly, the fear had vanished from their eyes. Lauren and Henry returned on Monday morning. Henry slumped in the car seat, holding Teddy tightly. His face was no longer burdened, it now held a hint of childlike light. As Paul opened the door and stepped out, the boy ran into his arms. I missed you so much, Daddy. I missed you too. So much. The three of them embraced for a long time on the porch, the very place that, just a week ago, had been the scene of a horrifying nightmare. That evening, after Henry had fallen asleep in his new upstairs room far from the old basement, Lauren sat at the dining table, sipping ginger tea, looking at her husband. It still feels like a long dream. A nightmare, Paul said. And we've woken up. Do you believe we're really safe now? Yes. Michael was transferred to Washington, D.C., placed in isolated custody. Richard called me this afternoon. They found evidence linking the money laundering ring documents on the USB matched a previously suspended case. The police have officially reopened it. So he'll pay for what he's done. Paul nodded. For what he did. And for everything he threatened us with. Lauren squeezed his hand. Henry will be okay, right? We'll help him heal. Little by little. 3 weeks later, Paul received an email from the Virginia television station. Reporter Lucy Walker requested a private interview with the family, not showing names or faces, just to share their experience and warn other renters to be cautious of unusual signs. Lauren agreed. I think we should speak up. There are people like Michael out there, and families like ours too. If we stay silent, evil will keep living in the dark. The interview aired during prime time on Saturday. Lauren's voice, soft but firm, echoed through the broadcast. At first, I thought the strange sounds were just my imagination. But a mother's instinct is never wrong. When my son started changing, I knew something was happening. And when we found that trapdoor, I knew we couldn't ignore it. Viewers from across the United States responded positively. Many shared similar experiences about old houses with strange signs, mysterious tenants, unexplainable events. An independent investigator group even launched a social media series called The Nameless Basements. One afternoon, Richard Collins, the man who had helped them remotely through the entire ordeal, showed up at the house. Still as rugged as ever, but his eyes seemed gentler now. We've arrested 2 more people connected to the old case. Michael won't escape this time. Paul poured him coffee. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have known where to start. No. If it weren't for your perseverance, everything would have stayed buried underground. Truth only needs one person brave enough to drag it into the light. Lauren brought out a small cake and joked, if you don't eat this, we're committing a crime. Richard chuckled. A minor offense. I've dealt with killers. Your cake won't knock me out. Henry, too, gradually recovered. He returned to school, no longer startled awake by nightmares. One evening, Lauren came in to check on him. He was coloring. On the page was a completely different drawing from before, a blue beach, a smiling sun, and 3 people standing side by side. Who's this? Me, Mommy, and Daddy. Where's Teddy? Right here. Henry pointed to a little bear next to an umbrella. Lauren paused. What about the basement under the closet? Do you still think about it? No. That place isn't scary anymore. Because now there's light. Lauren pulled him into her arms. Her eyes welled with tears. 3 months later, the family decided to move to the southern coast where Paul had once dreamed of starting fresh. They bought a small house near the beach in Santa Barbara with a garden, plenty of sunlight, and most importantly, no basement. On move-in day, Lauren stood in the yard, looking around. Do you hear that? Paul tilted his head. Hear what? Nothing. No scratching, no footsteps. Just ocean waves and wind. The sound of freedom. Paul smiled, then called out, Henry. Come see your new room. The boy came running, eyes shining. Every room has windows. And no closet touches the wall. That's perfect, Lauren laughed. We're starting over, sweetheart. Henry nodded. That night, as the 3 of them sat down to their first dinner in the new house, warm yellow light bathed the cozy table. Paul looked at his wife and son, then asked. So what do you think of the new house? Henry munched on a piece of fish, then looked up with a mischievous grin. I like it. Because here, there are no secret doors, Daddy. Paul and Lauren burst into laughter. The sound echoed through the house, touching every corner, chasing away any shadows that remained. This story stands as a testament to the power of family, courage, and persistence in the face of injustice. When confronted with fear, Paul and Lauren didn't fall, they chose to face it, to protect their son and the truth. Even when the enemy was cunning and dangerous, the light of truth ultimately prevailed. It reminds us that as long as we don't stay silent and don't give up, even in the darkest of circumstances, we can always find a way out and a hopeful new beginning.
If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.